The evening sun fell low over the frontier, casting long bands of amber light across the Carter place. The house wasn't much, 2 small rooms, a sagging porch, and fences that had seen better seasons. But to Emily Carter, it was everything left of her family's name. She stood by the corral, sleeves rolled to her elbows, watching the wind ripple through the grass. Behind her, a single cow lode. Her father's grave rested on the hill, marked by a cross he'd carved himself before sickness took him the previous winter. The letter lay folded in her apron pocket. The county seal was still fresh. Taxes unpaid. Land purchased by James Dalton, the richest rancher in the valley. In 2 weeks, she was to vacate or face removal by law. She'd never met Dalton, though she'd heard plenty. How he'd built his spread from dust, how he never smiled, how his word could buy or bury a man. But tonight, none of that mattered. Emily had no choice. Tomorrow she'd ride into town and beg him to let her stay. Morning broke cold and gray. She saddled the old bay mare and rode the 5 miles to Dalton Ranch, heart thudding with each hoofbeat. When she reached the gate, she hesitated. The place stretched wider than she'd imagined. Fences straight as a ruler, barns painted red, cattle grazing like a moving sea. A ranch hand pointed her toward the house. She dismounted, brushed the dust from her skirt, and knocked. "Come in," a deep voice said. The man behind the desk looked up from a stack of papers. James Dalton was younger than she expected, late 30s maybe, built broad-shouldered from years of labor rather than privilege. His eyes were gray, unreadable. He set down his pen and stood. "Miss Carter," he said, as though he'd been expecting her. "I wondered when you'd come." She swallowed hard. "Mr. Dalton, I please, sir, if you'd just give me time. I can pay what's owed if I get through next harvest." He studied her. "The taxes were 3 years overdue before your father passed. You're alone out there?" "My mother's gone. My brothers went west. It's just me." Dalton leaned back, hands resting on his belt. "You shouldn't have to bear that alone." Her voice broke. "It's our home. My father built it. I can't lose it." Silence filled the room. Then Dalton said quietly, "Maybe you don't have to." She looked up, startled. He walked to the window. "I didn't buy your land to throw you out. I bought it because I couldn't stand to see it fall into hands that'd strip it bare. But I need help running this spread. Someone who knows the soil, who'll care for it. I could make you a partner. Your name stays on the deed. We work it together." Emily blinked. "A partner? Me?" He met her eyes. "You've kept that place alive by yourself through drought and grief. That's more than most men can claim." She felt her knees weaken. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay," he said simply. By the week's end, Emily had moved into the small foreman's cabin near the main house. She insisted on working for her keep, mending harnesses, cooking for the crew, tending the sick calves. Dalton never treated her as charity. He gave her fair wages, asked her opinion on crops, and listened when she spoke. At first, she found his quiet nature intimidating. He rarely smiled, and when he did, it was quick as lightning and gone just as fast. Yet his steadiness calmed her. When the wind howled through the canyons or a storm threatened the herd, his voice never rose. "We'll handle it," he'd say, and somehow they always did. One evening after supper, Emily stood on the porch watching the sky darken. Dalton joined her, leaning against the post. "Place looks better already," he said. "You've got a good eye for order." She laughed softly. "My father used to say fences are like faith. They only hold if you keep mending em." He smiled then, genuine. "Smart man." Her chest warmed at the sound of his laugh, low and used, almost surprised. Summer came harsh and dry. Water ran low, grass turned brittle. Together they worked dawn to dusk, driving cattle to higher pasture. Dalton rode beside her through heat and dust, never complaining. When a steer broke its leg, he knelt and did what had to be done while she turned away, tears burning her eyes. That night she brought him coffee by the fire. "Doesn't it ever wear on you?" she asked. He looked into the flames. "It does. But work keeps a man honest. Pain passes quicker when your hands are busy." Emily studied his face in the glow, strong lines softened by the light. "You talk like a man who's lost something." He hesitated. "My wife. 5 winters ago. Fever took her. I haven't spoken much since." She set down the cup gently. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. "So am I. But life don't end till you quit living it." Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither looked away. Days grew shorter. The partnership deepened. She began signing invoices beside his name. He asked her opinion on every decision, large or small. When the ranch hands teased, calling her the boss's right hand, Dalton only said, "Reckon that's true." One afternoon, a banker from town arrived unannounced. "Mr. Dalton," he said, "word is you've tied up half your profits in the Carter place. That property's near worthless. Sell it back, and you'll save yourself trouble." Dalton's jaw tightened. That land's staying put. When the banker left, Emily confronted him. "You shouldn't risk your ranch for mine." He turned to her, eyes steady. "It ain't risk if it's the right thing." Emotion caught in her throat. "Why are you doing this?" He stepped closer, voice rough. "Because some folks deserve a chance. Because you remind me what good looks like." Before she could answer, thunder rumbled outside. A storm was rolling in, dark and sudden. They spent the night saving livestock, hauling feed, and nailing shutters against the wind. By dawn, soaked and shivering, they stood watching the sun break through the clouds. Dalton looked at her, rain still dripping from his hat brim. "You did good," he said softly. "So did you." Autumn painted the hills gold. The ranch prospered. One evening, the county clerk arrived with papers to finalize joint ownership. Dalton handed Emily the pen. "It's yours as much as mine now." Her hand trembled as she signed. "Thank you." He shook his head. "No need for thanks. Just promise me you won't ever walk away from what you've built." "I won't," she said, voice steady. He lingered a moment, then spoke quietly. "Emily, there's something else." She looked up, heart racing. "I know folks talk. About us. About what this partnership means. Truth is, I don't care what they say. But I can't stand the thought of you being judged for my decisions. So I'll ask plain." He took a breath. "Would you let me court you proper?" For a long moment she couldn't speak. Then she smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. "You already have James Dalton. You just didn't know it." Winter settled over the plains, white and quiet. On Christmas Eve, the church bells in town rang clear through the cold air. Dalton stood beside Emily at the altar, both of them in simple clothes, surrounded by neighbors who had once doubted and now smiled through tears. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, James looked down at her and whispered, "Told you I'd help you keep your home." She squeezed his hand. "You did more than that, you gave me one." Outside, snow drifted over the rooftops and fields, softening every hard edge the world had once shown them. And somewhere in that silence, two hearts that had been burdened too long found rest at last.